Hello everybody, B America here with another video for you. Today I will be taking you on a tour through a horse track start and finish line that I've been working on. So in this video I won't be giving a full redstone tutorial, but I will be giving a look through all of the redstone that goes into making this horse track function and everything that it kind of does as it's being used. And then I will make a few more videos to actually show the redstone builds of each of the individual portions. So there will be probably one for the starting line, one for the scoreboard, and one for the finish line. So to begin, let's first go to the starting line. So how this works is there is actually a reset button, which is the orange button that you see, and the blue button is the starting gate. So when you hit the blue button, it will actually drop these gates down, and there will be a TNT in a dispenser, which if I tear through this here a little bit, is down here. So there's a dispenser under this blue block that's in the wall, and that drops a TNT into this obsidian chamber so that there's no damage to any of the circuitry, but it still gives you that gunshot feel that you would have during a race. And the orange button, which we can actually press now, will reset the scoreboard so that all of the items that are in the hoppers in the back, which I'll show you in a little bit, actually reset and all go into the first hopper, so that shows a score of 1 for all of them. As each of the competitors finish, they will run across and their score will be locked in place while all of the other scores increase. So that this is just to show a couple. So we had the first lane finish first, and then the third lane finish second, and then the rest of these are all free to keep increasing. This can have as many lanes as you want. You just have to change some of the hopper setups down here and in the scoreboard. But first, let's go to the starting line again. So this area here is just a big timer. You could actually make it a lot smaller with a hopper, but this just is to show the exact amount of time that it would take to actually open the gates, and then this pulse extender here is to leave the gates open long enough so that all the horses can get through no problem. It shouldn't be a problem even with just a button press, but just in case one of them gets stuck in the gate or something like that. So if we press that, you'll see an explosion over there and the gates dropped at the same time. And so when this wall is actually filled in, you wouldn't be able to see, but you can tell if the blocks are reset based on this light here. So you press this button, that light will go off, and it will stay off until all of the positions are ready, and then you know that you can hit go whenever that light turns back on. So now if we take a little tour down into the redstone, so the orange line down the bottom controls the finish line, and it also runs back into that room to make sure that you have the light, which tells you when everything's ready to go. And then we can go in the back here, and this will show kind of how the display board works. So each time a competitor finishes, a redstone pulse will come up, and it will go through here, and it will just flick this off just long enough to transfer one item into the next hopper, and that will increment the score. Now over on this side is actually where it takes into account where each competitor finished. So these hoppers here just have one item in them, and these turn the pressure plate into a T flip-flop so that you can, whenever a competitor finishes, it will turn on this redstone comparator, and if you reset it, it will move the item back over, which allows the finish line to reset. So then if we come out, so this observer here reads if any of these redstone lines have been ignited, which means that the competitor has finished, and it will send a pulse down here which turns on this observer and this one sends power through to increment the score by 1. So that's what these hoppers here are doing. So if you want to add more competitors, you would have to change the items in these hoppers from unstackable items to a 16 stack or 64 stack, depending on how many you're going to have. But whenever a competitor finishes, which I will show here, so the competitor comes through, and the redstone signal that this detector or this observer is reading will actually travel through this repeater first, powering this piston, so that the signal coming through doesn't actually make it to this line, which prevents this one from incrementing while all the rest of them do. And then you see that this is set to 2 ticks, which is actually just so that this pulse here is long enough to actually let a item increment 100% of the time. Because otherwise you might, if you just leave it at 1, the 1 tick pulse isn't always long enough for the hoppers to dispense their item. And then as you can see, the redstone line that resets comes through here, which just allows all of these to drain across and fill back up this hopper so that everything's ready to go again. And then to end this little area, this observer here will actually just detect whether this comparator has an output or does not. So as you can see, there's nothing in here, so this this detector never ticked, so that's why there's still only 1 at top. So really all of the complicated stuff is being handled in this one line here. And this can actually be set up so that if you have a repeater here and repeater here, so basically replace all the dust with repeaters except for down on the bottom here, then you can replace this entire thing with just repeaters and actually make them side by side. However, you won't be able to make sure that each competitor is only hitting their own pressure plate. So like if somebody was running right here, but there was 2 pressure plates side by side, they might accidentally hit both, which would throw off some of the scores. So then these dark blue lines are just transport lines, so they're just sending the signal over and up to each of the individual displays. So these can also be simplified by just changing them over to only observers and just running observer lines over there. That'll make everything a lot more compact, but it will also make it a lot more expensive. So that's just kind of, if you're doing this in survival, you might want to stick with the redstone, but if you're not worried about resources, so you're doing it in creative, or you just have a lot of redstone resources, you can just do observer lines, and you won't have to worry about whether or not, or the size down here. And you can also move the starting gate over, since you don't have to worry about these torches interacting with this line. So then this here is the starting gate line, which is really just a redstone signal coming through from the button, and it's direct signal, just with that pulse extender in there. And these torches keep the bottom doors closed, and the torches on top keep the top doors closed, which I should be able to break into here. So as you can see, this line is just powered, and whenever the signal comes through, it turns both of those off, opening the doors, and that time is set up with the time for a TNT block to explode. So if we just reset this here, and I'm just going to show you a full working run. So I'm just going to run through each of the different blocks. doesn't matter what order you go in, so let's just pick some at random. And it doesn't matter how many times these are stepped on after the first time, because the hoppers lock the position in, so it doesn't make a difference whether the items are stepped on or not. And for 6th place, in this case, it doesn't actually matter if it gets stepped on or not. If you add a 7th in, then this one would matter, and then the 7th person wouldn't matter. And the only reason that works is because the displays actually start at 1. If you had the displays start at 0, so all of them were empty when you first began, then each individual line would need to be stepped on. So if, let's say, this started out 0, and then once they finished, it ticked to 1, then you've already used up that first finish place to add a spot, where since they already start at 1, when this first person finishes, then it doesn't really matter whether they actually finished before or after anybody else, because it's already there, so it just locks their score in place. But as you can see, then each of the individual positions are maintained, and no matter how many times I step on any of these, none of that will change, because if we go down here, you can see that all of these pistons are now pushed down, so the hoppers in the scoreboard can't tick anymore. And then more just for design, not really for any form of redstone necessity, I added these fences in here. They do, as long as you have a 1 space gap between, it shouldn't be a problem of which person finishes where, just as long as they don't press the wrong pressure plate. But so leaving a 1 space gap is helpful, but the fence wouldn't be required. And then these banners can actually be replaced with like the number banners. So if you're making this a round racetrack, you might want one to start on this side, but then finish on this side, just so that each of the competitors would have to run across the racetrack whenever they're going into the turn, and then run back across whenever they're coming to the finish line. And that just makes sure that all the distances that they run would be as close to equal as possible. So that is it for this video, and I will probably be making another video on the starting gate next. Thanks for watching.